One night in 1752, Benjamin Franklin conducted his famous kite experiment. He tied a key to a kite string and flew the kite during a thunderstorm. This man, who was one of the greatest scientific minds of his time, had an idea that electricity flowed and it had positive and negative elements to it. The lightning struck the kite and the current flowed, giving him quite the shock. But he didn't mind as he got to prove that electricity and lightning were the same. Some give credit to Benjamin Franklin for discovering electricity, but it could be more complex than that as there has been evidence of ancient humans discovering primitive applications of the phenomenon. Fast forward to 1879, Thomas Alva Edison, working on electricity, built his first incandescent electric light bulb. He eventually created his own company and distributed his product to the entire country of America, making the entire gas lighting industry obsolete in the process. In September 1882, he established a full-scale central power generating station distributing power to high-profile consumers, thus creating the world's first modern electrical grid. Throughout the 20th century, improvements and breakthroughs in power generation, transmission, and storage were steadily being developed. And we now move to our current time. Electricity has become an essential part of our life. We use it for the heating and cooling of our homes, to run our appliances, computers, machineries, and refrigeration. Electricity has become a necessity to our society, which is why it's unfortunate that a huge chunk of it is generated from fossil fuels. In 2018, close to 68% of the Philippines' power production came from fossil fuels. We as a country are really dependent on coal and bunker fuel. But is it all that bad? I mean, one could always argue in favor of fossil fuels. It's reliable and easily available, although sometimes there may be some instabilities in the oil and gas market. It's highly efficient. Burning only a small amount releases high amounts of energy, and this is what we use it for. Lastly, amongst other unmentioned advantages, it's abundant in nature. We extract fossil fuels almost anywhere in the world, and although it's finite in supply, studies say that our current reserves will last centuries into the future. However, that's just the thing. It's finite, which means the use of fossil fuels cannot be maintained indefinitely. And there's a much more disturbing reason why we should phase out fossil fuels, and this takes a higher priority over the looming depletion of our reserves. Burning fossil fuels releases large amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. This practice, which we have been doing since the Industrial Revolution, contributes and amplifies the planet's natural greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect naturally warms the planet by absorbing heat from the sun which would otherwise be reflected into space. We are artificially warming the planet more than what is supposed to be necessary by pumping these emissions into the atmosphere. Climate and weather patterns become more severe and frequent, brought about the rising global temperatures. This causes heat waves, floods, drought, and more disastrous typhoons like Odette, Yolanda, and Sendong. These are but some of the fatal consequences we as a species would face if we do not phase out fossil fuels soon. Which is why we should promote and continue the shift to renewable energy, starting with our own country. Since the late 20th century, our country has been steadily building sustainable alternatives to power generation. One of these is geothermal energy, where in 2020, the Philippines ranked third following the United States and Indonesia as the world's top producers of geothermal power. We currently have 7 geothermal fields which supply approximately 12% of the nation's energy. Geothermal power plants produce electricity by harnessing the continuous renewable heat of the earth, running steam from deep water wells into power generating turbines. Our country has also been making strides in harnessing hydroelectric power. This is a renewable source of energy which uses falling or fast-running water from dams or diversion structures to produce electricity. We currently have more than 70 hydropower plants in operation, which supply about 16% of the nation's total energy production. To end, We are also focusing on solar energy. In 2018, our country ranked first among developing countries in Asia which use solar photovoltaic systems for power generation. Major solar farms in the country can be found in central and northern Luzon. Although the Philippines is a developing country, we've already started the push for renewables, and it doesn't have to be costly or unprofitable. With the correct systemic changes, government subsidies, and of course the willingness of the Filipino people, we can be independent from fossil fuels in the future. From Benjamin Franklin to Thomas Edison, and from the development of the modern power grid to our current time, electricity has become a part of our daily lives. We only need to make sure that the way we generate it is not destructive to our environment. We must continue the grand shift to renewables for a net zero future.